Greetings and salutations. I am Thom Bowers.
And I'm Matt Meldrum.
We are Sons of Nothing, and we got news for you. The debut redo is done did.
In the bag.
That's right. The last track has been uploaded to the YouTubes, and we are now recording a commentary to talk about it and the track that came before it and a bunch of other random crap besides.
Sweet. Let's get this over with.
Okay. So I've been thinking about this, and I think in order to do it right, we need to sort of break things up. I have a bunch of like random trivia that I want to bring up because I've been taking notes the whole time about oh, I forgot to say that. Oh, I forgot to say that. Oh, this would be a fun thing for this is a fun answer to a question nobody asked. And this might be my last chance to do that sort of thing because, you know, here we are doing the commentary. So I want to do
this is good because nothing holds in the viewers like random trivia.
Absolutely. Hey, you know, here's the thing. We have gone in the course of this whole enterprise, we have gone from 19 subscribers to 25 subscribers. Like that. Now, I know, like, relatively, that's a major shift, you know, when you think about it percentage wise, right? So I figure if you're the kind of viewer and listener who's into a couple of middle-aged white guys playing rock music that has never really received any kind of mass audience before, you would be interested in delving further. So we're catering to you.
You're in on the ground floor.
That's right. You'll be able to say, I remember when they did that last commentary episode. And those things seemed like silly things to talk about at the time, but it ended up laying the foundation for a long and beautiful fandom. Let's start talking about track number 10, Poison Ivy.
I hope to see you.
Poison Ivy is an excellent example of Parkinson's law.
Do explain.
Well, Parkinson's law is basically the adage that the amount of work will fill the time allowed for the amount of work.
Yes. Not unlike budgetary things. You always spend within the means available to you, right?
Right. So this is going to hold a special place in this project's canon or history because the project started with "We Will Do Still Believe," and then we had this crazy harebrained. It seemed like such a wild idea at the time. Let's also do some re-recording on Poison Ivy. That just was mind-blowing at the time.
Yes.
And in between the time that we started doing that and actually created those tracks and then set it aside so we could start talking about the other tracks, we ended up doing the exact same thing with all of the other tracks before it.
Yes. And every time we said, that's it. That's the last one we're doing that with. That's it. We're done. No,
right.
Turns out we're going to keep going. It was sort of to talk about philosophy and whatnot. This is like in Jurassic Park, they call it the Malcolm effect. When things start to fall apart, it starts slowly and then it builds on itself and falls apart more catastrophically as it goes along. Kind of the opposite of that, in that it all came together more quickly as it went along. But it definitely, the whole thing blew out into this whole thing we weren't expecting. But Poison Ivy was like the first crack in the dam, I think.
Yeah, and we spent, you know, weeks or months working on tracking for that. And, you know, well, I spent 2 days mixing it maybe, but then we spent pretty much a week per track after that and got the same amount of work done. So there's your Parkinson's law example.
Pretty much. Yeah, it was like it was not unlike our theme music experience every single week. It was exhilarating in its way and totally exhausting also in its way. Poison Ivy also, I think we've entered the phase of the album where it's the one of these things is not like the other phase, because Poison Ivy is a very different kind of song than just about everything else on the album. And there are reasons for that. The primary one being that neither of us had anything to do with writing it. Poison Ivy is a song that goes back to a band I was in very briefly at the end of the 90s, a band called Naked Orphans. I left the Rain Kings in 1998, and then for a while I didn't want to do anything musically. I was sort of burned out, and I think I answered their ad because they definitely already were a band, had their brand together, had their style, had their sound, had their plans, and they just needed a bass player, which to me sounded fantastic to be able to go into a thing and have virtually no responsibilities, right? And they were a hard rock, kind of verging on metal combo. Not like in an 80s hair metal way, but like in an early 80s sort of new wave of British metal way, like early Ozzy, some Iron Maiden kind of stuff in there, and also some kind of punk and hardcore mixed in on the side. It's some very aggressive stuff, but it always had just enough melody to see it through to being, you know, songs. And this was one of the ones that was the most accessible, this song. I always enjoyed playing it. I always enjoyed just listening to it. There's these great sort of moody, ominous verses and these big cathartic choruses. This song was written by Jay Koenig, who's the lead singer of that band. He very kindly gave me permission to record it for this project. And I really wanted to do that because by the time I got to the end of my tenure in that band, it was very brief. It was through, you know, the most of 1999 I played in that band. And I didn't leave that band. The band sort of dissolved around me, unfortunately. But just before the band broke up, they had recruited this local producer engineer named Eric Peterson, and they were going to make a record. And we had laid down tracks for one song before the whole thing went to hell. So I got on with Eric at the time. I was very excited to meet someone who did that sort of thing. And I said, you know, I had spent enough time in this band really enjoying just being a musician and not having like the weight of the world on my shoulders for being the writer and the singer and the promoter and all of the other stuff that went along with it. And I thought, okay, it's finally time to step out on my own and, you know, do something that was sort of my project instead of joining someone else's. So when that happened, the more that sort of went along, the more I thought I'd like to commemorate my time in this band because it was really helpful for me. It was very rehabilitative in a way. And so Jay very kindly said, yes, take your pick of the songs and go forth, young man. So I chose Poison Ivy. I felt it was best suited to my voice. And I felt it was the closest that any of those songs came to meshing with the other songs that were already there. And also on the original version, Jay came in to sing the choruses, which was pretty awesome. That track was lost. And so you have kindly stepped in to take that over on this. And also you did something really interesting with the guitars and the guitar leads in this that I'd like you to explain to the folks at home.
When we started looking at the songs that we could do something with before we decided to do every single song, this one popped up for a good reason. We had some really good live versions of this track, and the live versions that we had kind of inspired me to do something a little bit different production wise. Instead of just redoing the parts from the original track, I kind of took a little trip in my imagination to what would happen if we were recording this track essentially during the clarity sessions. So we would have Tim Hollinger and me playing guitar, and you know, there's some keyboards in there as well. But during the clarity sessions, there was quite a bit of passing the torch between Tim and myself.
Yeah. There's a lot of songs where you're in one channel and he's in the other channel, and the parts trade back and forth.
Right. And this live, there's a live version of the song that we have that gave me enough fodder that I thought, okay, I'm going to try and recreate a Tim Hollinger part, which is what I did. So you hear two guitars in the song, one, and again, it's kind of the clarity vibe. So you've got one guitar that's a Strat with EMG single coil pickups going through a Fender amplifier. That is all Tim. You've got another guitar with the humbuckers going through a Mesa Boogie amplifier. That's all me. That's very much kind of the synergy.
Dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the dynamics that we had during that time. And it was fun to try and kind of recapture that and put it in print. I had a lot of fun trying to mimic Tim's sound and, you know, style in this song. I don't know that I did it 100% because I am my own guitar player, but it was still fun to try and mimic someone else.
Yeah, and at least, I mean, and of course, I would catch it because being intimately familiar with both of you, it was like really great for me on like a sort of warm, fuzzy, nostalgic, sentimental basis. But also, the thing just kicks ass. It's really great guitar playing all the way through, and there aren't really any like full-on hard rock moments on this record other than this, I think. Even when it gets heavy in other songs, like, Atmosphere is pretty aggressive, but it is just kind of a blues workout. And this is a little bit darker and a little bit more minor key, and it's got its own vibe to it. And I'm glad we were able to bring that flavor in, and evoking Tim's spirit helped.
For the record, I got to correct a YouTube comment on Poison Ivy. The guitars are not all me or all me mimicking Tim. There is one surviving guitar part from the original tracks.
Oh, wow.
That is actually the main guitar part, the main undistorted,
the main clean line.
Yeah, the clean through line guitar part is actually from the original tracks.
Oh, very nice. I did not know that. And sadly, I can't remember who played it.
We're going to say it was John Clark.
We're going to say it was John Clark. It might have been Eric Peterson. It might have even been Sean Durant, who was one of the guitar players in Naked Orphans and definitely was involved in the recording of the album. But I don't think that was his part initially. I think he was more of a rhythm guy on that song. So we'll say it was John. And thanks, John. I'm kind of surprised that this song didn't last longer in our set list. I have to assume it's because none of us wrote it, and we were more interested in kind of charting our own course at that point, because musically it is closer to where we wanted to go than a lot of the things on this record. I think so.
I think it inspired some of the right. I think it was maybe a little bit of a victim of its own success in that it inspired us to write more, and that meant that it went out the door because we had written stuff to take its place.
Exactly. Yeah. Who needs this anymore when we've got Mr. Serious in the set and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm happy with the way this one came out, and I'm happy that we were able to take this and fold it into the greater. Well, take this and have it inspire the things that came forward, even if it took this long to get it to the finish line. So while we're on the subject of kind of history and band genealogy a little bit, I would like to talk about quickly. Last time we did a great sort of tribute to James Clark and how important his drumming was for this record. I think it's also, first of all, credit to Eric Peterson as well for getting such a great drum sound out of 4 channels?
Yeah.
Kick,
drum, kick, snare, and overheads, essentially.
Yeah, and that's it. Really clear, really powerful, really articulate. Doesn't sound, like it doesn't sound as primitive as it is. I've been watching the Get Back documentary on Disney Plus, and it's not really all that different. They did 50 years ago recording Ringo, but it holds up. It was a good job. But more important almost than the music is how important James Clark is to the genealogy of the band. So when I first decided to do the project, I had held on to James's number from the Rain Kings. He was the drummer in that band. He was the first guy I recruited because he was really a pro. He was in the union. He always came prepared. He was a great asset, and I knew he'd do a great job. But while we were in the process of making the record, James invited me to audition for a cover band that he was in, this band that I can't remember the initial name of, but eventually we came to call it Jupiter. And this was a band that featured John Clark on lead guitar. It featured Julie Holt on lead vocals, and it featured Ray O'Pikins on bass guitar. All 3 of them came to be friends and allies and bandmates in various combinations through the years in this band. And I was tapped to play keyboards in that band for a while, which was quite an adventure. So that was part 1 of the web of connections that James inspired. The second thing was when we decided to put a live band together once the record was done. I wanted to get 2 guitar players. We already had John Clark on board. I wanted to get 2 guitar players, and James said, hey, remember the last gig we played in the Rain Kings at the University of Utah, and there was that band Quiver Stick that we opened for, which is a band that featured a young Tim Hollinger and an even younger Matt Meldrum. And he said, we should get Tim, the guitar player from that band. I said, okay, sure, why not? I met Tim, we hit it off, that worked out, that was great. And then about, I don't know, 6 months in or so, John Clark decided to take off and do something else. And Tim said, you know who we should get in for a second guitar player is Matt Meldrum. I said, didn't he play bass in another band? He's like, yeah, but he can play anything. We should get him in. And so we approached you, and you had some conflicts at the time. It took a while to sort of get you into the fold, but we did it eventually. So the point is, like, without James, I don't know that we'd be sitting here today. It's one of those crazy things to think about how A led to B, led to C, led to Z.
The transitive law of Utah music.
Yeah, very much so. He was sort of the, I don't know, the Kaiser Soze, or the I don't know, the Kevin Bacon
Wow.
of the
impressive.
scene. So there's that, and a couple of other random song things before we get on to the last tune. All right, these are just random brain droppings of mine. In Between. We talked at the time about how In Between and Solitary World from the Clarity album were kind of born at the same time conceptually, and the lyrics were written at the same time. The key phrase is alien sky, which is the one phrase that they share. And that was really big into that term. That was going to be the name of the band at one point. It was going to be an album title. I was going to name my production company Alien Sky Music at one point. It was kind of a big branding thing. I don't know why I'd let it go, but there's your forensic proof that those two songs are sort of polar twins.
I feel like I need to change my background now to an alien sky.
Yes. I'm going to choose, I don't know, Pluto. Backing vocals. So because of the way things snowballed and we ended up working very, very quickly, one of the more expeditious things we were doing, is that I was taking lead on most of these songs, and then you would end up doing a whole lot of backing vocals on your own. Sometimes I chimed in, but a lot of the time I held back and just went with your backing vocals and my lead vocals, and that created this really interesting sound on this record that's a little different than what we normally do, you and I. We like to blend our voices as much as possible, and I really enjoy the character that sort of put out, particularly in Velvet Elvis, where it has this almost, we covered an ELO song years ago, The Way Life's Meant to Be.
Life's Meant to Be, yeah.
And it has almost that character where the backing vocals are so specific and tight knit and call and response. And you have this sort of clip delivery that really reminds me of Jeff Lynne, that between the two of us, it creates this whole different dynamic than that song used to have. I'm always a fan of bands with more than one lead singer. And there's a point in that song where the song goes in a round, spin around in my head, spin around, spin around, spin around. And I always wanted that to be multiple people singing it. When we did the record, it was just me. And it didn't come out as cool as I wanted it to. But now it's me and you. And I love the way it came out. It reminds me of what are some of good examples? I always go, the most vanilla example is the Eagles' New Kid in Town, where it's like Glenn Frey all the way through, but then just for that one little moment, it's Don Henley going, oh. But what's a better example? Yes, Rhythm of Love.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, where you get a real strong Chris Squire popping in there.
Yeah.
Where you got John and Trevor covering a lot, but yeah, I mean,
and they
hear those pops,
and they repeat each other's phrase, and it kind of goes in a round, and that's kind of what I was looking to do here, and I'm just really happy that it finally came out the way I wanted it to. What else? The Big Truth. Okay, the title, The Big Truth, never used to appear in that song. The chorus was, day by day, every day, it's getting smaller. What I want, all I want is getting smaller, because I thought I was being so clever, leaving out that phrase in my pretentious way.
You got to think about it.
When I brought that song going back to Naked Orphans, when I brought that song to the band, because they played it for a little while, and I brought it to Jay to sing, he didn't like that chorus because he's like, you know, it sounds like I'm doing a commercial for Cialis. I can't get that phrase. Day by day, it's getting smaller. Just seems like a really, I don't want to stand on stage and put that out to an audience. Is there something we can do about that? So in deference to him, I rewrote it to day by day, every day, I'm getting stronger, which was originally what we recorded. When it came time to do it this time, I decided to split the difference. And so it's day by day, I tell myself I'm getting stronger, but what I want is getting smaller. And I thought, okay, we finally got, you know, the chocolate and the peanut butter together and it works. And then just to put the cherry on top, we did drop the phrase, the big truth at the end of the song, just to have it over with. So now we have our cake and we're eating it too. Or we ate our cake and we have it too, to be more precise.
The peanut butter cake?
The peanut butter chocolate
with the
cake
chocolate and the cherry.
And the cherry on top.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Which is kind of, you know, a tortured but apt metaphor for that song.
Yeah, I'm going to go check my blood sugar.
Okay. What else? We Are One. The title for We Are One came about from, so Rush came to town sometime in the mid-90s, and the local newspaper reviewed the show, talking about the opening song was their song Dreamline, which doesn't really have a big chorus hook, but it does have one repeated phrase, which is the phrase, we are young. And the reporter, obviously unfamiliar with the Rush catalog, took that as the chorus and the title of the song and got the words wrong. So the famous Canadian power trio opening with their song, We Are One.
The power trio Rash.
Yeah, Rash. with their trombones and their accordion and their sausage machine. So I thought that was A, hilarious, and B, that'd be a good title for a song. And that's where that came from. Two other quick things about We Are One, which is it's the first and maybe only time I ever deliberately wrote lyrics that don't rhyme. I don't know why I did it that way. I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but there you go.
I think it's part of that pretentious part of you that wanted to prove you could do it.
To prove I could do it. Well, so many of these songs are weird experiments. You know, they're like experiments in form. What if I did something like this? And you and I have done that too, to some degree, but I think we've refined things over the years to the point where it doesn't feel academic like that. It feels more organic. But the other thing on We Are One is on this recording of We Are One, I put in this little bit in before the last chorus. I quoted the bass line from The Who's Gettin' in Tune, which is important for me sentimentally because it's also connected to the inspiration for that song. And also it's kind of a little in-joke. So eagle-eared listeners, no, it doesn't work out. Bat-eared listeners might have picked that up already. But if not, go seek it out and see if you agree. So I think that is it for the random crap. And so now we need to talk about the final track on the record, which is Join the Club.
This time be remembered till the day that all are one. Join up.
This one is also kind of a ringer in that we already had the bulk of the recording done. We re-recorded Join the Club from scratch for the Baker's Dozen project back in, 2015, 14?
Sure.
Something like that. And it's a really great recording. It's got Tommy Maris on drums. It's got John Flanders returning on the saxophone. It's a way more lush, orchestrated soundscape compared to the original, which is very bare bones. The original almost has no guitar on it, other than a couple of solo bits. It's piano, drums, bass, and vocals. And it's just a really nice, sort of symmetrical, really, selection, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the record, it's sort of egg-shaped. It starts here with just me on solo piano. It busts out into this full-on re-recording with Tommy on the drums, does this whole big middle section that's kind of a mixed bag, but closer in fidelity to the original album with more original album elements, and then closes up again with another re-recording with Tommy on drums and ends with me on the solo piano again. So that was completely unintentional, but I dig it.
It was intentional. We're taking
Okay.
credit for it.
Oh, okay. All right. You're right. We should stop doing that. We should stop pretending that we don't know what we're doing.
It was all part of the plan.
That's right. Embrace the pretentiousness. That's the mantra for 2022. So anyway, this song is really important to me personally. It's another one that goes back to the jam band days. In fact, literally to a high school jam. That fortunately someone thought to hit record on, and my friend David Freestone came up with a really cool little clean guitar part. I played this for you finally. Was this the first time you hearing this jam?
Yes.
Is it unbelievable to you that out of that came a real song, or do you see the seeds?
I see the seeds, but it's probably good you didn't show that to me until now.
It would have colored your perception of the whole thing.
It may have messed with the whole song.
Yeah, no, it's kids screwing around, but that is a really nice guitar part. And I couldn't get out of my head for years and years. I thought, I want to make this into a real song. When I finally did sort of get it together and get the wherewithal to compose the rest of the music around it, write some words, put it all together in a big arrangement, it became obvious that the song needed to also be about old friends. A little bit of Dave specifically. We hadn't seen each other for a really long time. And I wanted to be sort of like, this is the fulfillment of the promise we made to ourselves when we were teenagers and kind of wanted to do this. Look, I've done it. How cool, you know? But also, you know, in the lyrics, it's like, you know, grab your piece of the song. It's like, but it's also yours, you know, it's yours and mine together. And I'm really happy that that we were able to do this. And I talk about We Are One being unabashedly sentimental. This one's really kind of even more so. And so there are lots of little in jokes from, you know, different childhood friends and things like that. And it features actual audio from that jam and from other recordings that people, you'll hear my friend John Cannon's voice is on there. Dave's voice is on there, obviously. Not very much of me, weirdly. But Doran Barton, Foz, the guy who did our lighting and our screen effects and a lot of video content for us for years, is on those recordings. And it's just this nice sort of closing of the circle for me. The other thing about Join the Club is I remember this being a real shift for you in terms of production. I remember this being like a new plateau for you when we did it a few years ago.
When we did it, I was actually thinking about that when I remixed it. Speaking of which, I did not want to remix this song. I thought I thought the mix on this, I liked everything about the version we did of this song in 2015 or whenever it was. Just kind of wanted to leave it the way it was and tag it on to the end of the album. But the gods of this effort intervened in that as well, because I could not find the actual unmastered mix of this song, which led me to remix it anyway. And in remixing it, listening back, I realized, particularly with the keyboards and the strings, it was a big shift for me from treating the strings as just, here's some chordal pads to fill in the space, to thinking more about an actual orchestration, which is pretty cool because it definitely led into the orchestrations that we did in Anachronism off of Almost Paradigm, and even in the orchestration we did on Still Believe for this effort. It just gave me a little bit more confidence in doing more with the keys and trying to get them more involved as real parts instead of just backing pads or reinforcing.
It's true. And yeah, you can definitely see the seeds of it here and the fruits of it later. And then another thing, you know, I also would have been happy to just use the mix we used before if it had been available. But I think that you did make some improvements here. The guitar and saxophone have a really nice separation. I feel the room a little more. It's not quite as heavy as before. And, you know, there was nothing wrong with it, but it's opened up even further in this version. And I really dig it. And you also managed to blend the coastline reprise at the end pretty seamlessly. We were wondering about whether we were going to even leave that on or whether we were going to have to retrack it. And I'm really happy that it came the way it did, because again, it's that nice little symmetry that we talked about earlier, and gives the whole thing, you know, an overall journey that came to a cool place. And that is pretty much the end of any music talk we have. The one last thing about the record, the cover art. So the original cover was the top of my daughter's head. She was born, I think, like 6 weeks before we took the picture. So it's an extreme close-up. So it's just kind of hair and skin. And I remember some people were sort of disconcerted by it because they weren't really sure what they were looking at. But it's the top of my infant daughter's head. And so when it came time to do it again, it just seemed logical that, well, I should do another picture of the top of her head. So such was done. And I think it turned out great. And happily the hair is very different now, not only just because there's more of it, but because, you know, she has some cool coloring going on. And I was really happy that all fell into place appropriately for the, it's sort of like when we had your son redo the intro to One Left Turn years later, when we did the remaster of that record.
Yeah, that's right. When Scott, we had him, he was probably 2 or 3 when I had him track the little "shh, you got to be quiet" at the top of that album. And when we decided to remix and remaster it, we decided to have some fun with that and just have the older version of him redo that. I will say that I think your daughter is probably more apt to do that than my son now. If we had to do that now, there's no way I could get Scott in front of a microphone.
Really? This is the same Scott that enthusiastically rocked his socks off during Quo Vadis, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you, those teen years, they sure turn you.
Okay then. Well, we're glad we got him when we did. We have quite a bit of that sort of cataloging of our experience as we go, and that's been, you know, one of the fun parts of going back and revisiting this, is seeing how much sort of slice of life audio is in there besides just the songs.
Yeah, there's a lot of us from 20 years in there.
There really is. And one thing you talked about before was that you, throughout the course of this project, you sensed that there was a continuity that you hadn't noticed before between this album and sort of the evolution of the band. And I think I have to agree that I'd always seen this as sort of off to the side. And I do see a thread that connects this to One Left Turn, et cetera, as it goes along. But that being the case, and for that reason, I'm really happy that it now exists in a form that we can be proud to put in public and say, here it is, it's definitive. But more than that, you know, I've said before that kind of in my head, the first real Sons of Nothing record is Clarity, because it was the first thing that was done by the people in the room from the ground up with no leftover material, very much a band project. And it was the first time that you and I ever co-wrote anything. Yeah. So our chemistry has sort of formed the cornerstone of what I consider the band to really be. So the fact that now you've gone back and put so much of yourself into this record, it really is this great, you know, again, a sort of fulfillment of a promise that we made to ourselves. And I just want to say, I've said it in private, I think I've said it in public, but I'm saying it again. I am so grateful that you have put so much of yourself into this, not only because the results are so great, but because the results are us. And being able to claim this music for ourselves, and for it to be about you and me as much as it is about the past, is really awesome. And so thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. I think it stands on its own in the Sun canon now. It belongs, yeah. It belongs here. It belongs with the other albums. And it's just so awesome, I think, to be able to have it now, like you said, as something we can be proud of, as something that we can claim as our own, as part of the band canon. Hashtag debut redeemed.
There you go. As of now, you're probably watching this in 2022 because we're recording this on New Year's Eve 2021, and I don't think it's going to be ready in less than 12 hours. So at this point, the album is not only here on the playlist with these commentary tracks, but you can also find it at our Bandcamp site. You can stream it there, you can download it there, and it's going to be in much wider distribution in the days to come. So we want to thank everyone who has joined us on this journey. And if you want to go get a copy of this for your very own, you are now able to. From, hey, this would be a fun experiment, to, oh man, what a rewarding experience. I can't thank you all enough for being on board with us. If you want to subscribe, there is more to come. Matt, I believe you said you had some prize in mind if we got to 26 subscribers, the magic number, some hashtag reward you had.
We'll have another video.
Well, that is true.
If we get another subscriber, we will actually make another video.
That's right. Every time we get a new subscriber, there'll be a new video. So if we
There's
get
a commitment there, if
we get bombed at this point, then we're going to have a whole new full-time job on our hands. But yes, again, thank you to everybody. Like and subscribe and share and do all the stuff. And we will see you again in 2022.
Goodbye, all.
Can you read the shirt?
It's backwards.
It's backwards. Okay, hold on. How about now?
Is my thumb up or is it down?
All right. So now I'm looking directly at you, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of creepy. Cut.